Today I want to voice my opinion about some serious problems that we have on Darktide, and as you know if you've been watching, I've been data mining, getting all the info we need to make the quality of life on the game better by making all the RNG systems and stats more transparent so that we can make decisions that don't waste our time. And I've been reading and responding to almost every comment that I can, so the feedback I've gotten from the majority of people is something we seriously need to talk about. So not only am I going to go over the crashing, the bad gameplay loop, the missing content, and the massive steps we've taken back from CBT to live, I also want to provide my insight and opinions on things that I think will help make the game better for everybody. And as always, I do really want to hear what you have to think about what's happening with the game, or if there's something that I missed that needs serious attention. And I'm not here to talk about the loud 1% at the bottom that want ridiculous things, or the really quiet 1%, because it's not a lot of people that are experiencing how horrendous the end game actually is, because this should be for everybody. But I will touch on a little bit of everything, and starting with how every single person I've talked to, read a thing about, everywhere you see it, the main agreement across the board in the entire community is how poorly the Fat Shark leadership is managing the game. And if you wonder why they keep making really bad decisions, all you have to do is go look at their forums and understand who they've facilitated over the years. And it's basically just an area set up to reward and promote toxicity. The problem is when you placate to this loud 1% of the top or bottom, you end up with garbage. Now on Vermintide 1 and 2, it happened again. We're basically in a flat time loop where they make the same mistake on the game launch, but then they start listening to the majority after a month or two, and they actually make the game pretty good after they've tanked their player base. That's the exact opposite of what you would want to do. You'd want to grow the player base and make it better and better. And they even left a whole bunch of features that made Vermintide 2 better for the majority of people out of Darktide. And something as simple as an anti-kick feature when you get to an end of a mission is something that should not have been left out of Darktide. All these things helped make Vermintide actually good that weren't in on launch, that people hated. So that's something that this game desperately needs, among a ton of other things that are in those games to help make them better. And one thing I see a lot of people talking about is solo gameplay. And not only do I think they should add solo gameplay eventually, I don't think they should add it right now. I think that they have to focus on a lot bigger issues. There's a lot more things more important than solo gameplay at the moment, because currently the AI in Darktide is so bad that having them on your team as anything more than a meat shield is just a detriment. And if you've tried to queue into a tier 5 alone with 3 bots, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, you should, because it is an absolute mess. And basically whoever is taking the feedback and pushing it to the higher ups is doing an absolutely horrendous job, because something like that should not even be a priority at all when the worst possible issue of a game exists, and that's spam crashing. And it's obviously a problem for the majority of people. A game should never launch like this, because it's the worst issue that could possibly exist that's trying to be swept under the rug by Fat Shark apologizers who disregard other people's problems. There is a genuine group of people that don't believe the crashing exists, even though the game runs like hot garbage and has insane memory leak issues, which you can live with the memory leak issues by just turning the game off and on once in a while, but spam crashing out of a game is ridiculous. And while the crashing issues have gotten slightly better, they were in full swing on day 1 of the game. But when you wonder why it's still a problem, it was obviously just ignored until it was too late. And the Steam reviews really balanced that out by forcing attention to it, not only tanking the reviews from positive all the way to very mixed, because it very clearly was not a very well reviewed game, especially when you can't play it, but then when the toughness was bugged day 1 because they nerfed it and broke it, instead of fixing that game-breaking bug, they pushed a cash shop out instead, slapping the player base in the face. Imagine the situation where you have a fix already ready. The toughness fix is ready to go in, but you prioritize predatory monetization over fixing actual gameplay. And even the people that pre-ordered the limited edition of the game didn't get their skins for over a week after the game came out. But don't worry, the cash shop is in, and every game-breaking bug and crash issue is still there, which is pretty disgusting behavior across the board, just to try and monetize every little thing that you can without fixing your game first. But we are where we are. And what's absolutely crazy is how so many people hold Fat Shark in such a high regard when their track record isn't exactly the greatest. And now they have one of the worst game launches of all time under their belt, and are so delusional they won't even give their community an apology. And you have to think when Cyberpunk came out, a much larger game, that was one of the first things the CEO even did. They came out and apologized, saying that they would do better and commit to quality, which is what they did. And Cyberpunk is easily one of the best games ever made now. But that cannot be said about Fat Shark and Darktide. At least not yet. And I don't want to completely take a dump on everyone that works at Fat Shark. This is very clearly a team leader and game director problem, because when you look at the level of detail that went into things as simple as reloading, you really understand how much love actually went into this game. The people that worked on actually bringing the Warhammer 40k universe to life genuinely cared about it. They hit the fantasy almost spot on for every single weapon in the game, aside from the Thunderhammer, which everybody agrees that the Thunderhammer just kind of like didn't hit the mark as to what it is fantasized to be, or what it's even described as in lore. But even then, all the animations on every weapon look amazing. Even the reloading, something as simple as reloading the revolver is one of the most satisfying things to watch in the game. Even though it's not fun to reload the revolver with every single bullet, it looks amazing. And the maps are beautiful too. So the first time you really log in and you play Enclave and Barrows, you feel so immersed that you don't want to leave, especially when you pair it with probably the best game soundtrack I've ever heard. The music in this game is top tier, really immerses you in like a grim dark fantasy and makes you lose track of time. The Fat Shark actually does have some of the most talented developers that exist right now, just with some of the worst team leaders, because they made this game genuinely just fun to log in and play. It's really unfortunate that that's all but ruined because of the crashing issues and the mobile gacha game systems in place with no depth of gameplay and toxic penances. And at no stage of any game should you just be camping a shop for a well-modified weapon, because that's currently the best way to get gear in Darktide, is to get a gray weapon with top-tier modified damage rolls and craft it up to legendary. I talked a bit about it in this video, and I am making a full in-depth video that you can look forward to on how to always cheese and craft the best gear. And the shop resets once an hour, and you need to be constantly checking it if you even want a piece of mediocre gear, let alone a best in slot piece. Because if you want a best in slot piece, there are so many hoops you have to jump through. And not only that, you're not even guaranteed to see an item that you want to try and roll up, but it also has to have good modifiers on top of even being able to see it. And then when you roll it up, it has different levels that the perks and blessings can roll, making it 30 to 40% worse from something on the low end to the high end. So if you want a god rolled best in slot item, you really have to just win the lottery. And even a low roll is good, but it's hard to even see an item worth upgrading to that. And even seeing something equipable is actually rare, and they said it would be a massive undertaking to fix this loop, since our resident tech priest Hadron is not allowed to craft any weapons. So it's a really good thing that we're at Antoma Prime, one of the largest producers of Mobian steel. So we should have no problem accessing an infinite amount of weapons from the shop at least, because when I click on the shop, I see 3 tabs. Instantly give up on the first one because it's just a slot machine. But then I click the weapon skins tab and I see 2 of every weapon just sitting there. So why not just add a 4th tab with 1 to 2 of every gray weapon with random modifiers, because they obviously still want the RNG system in there to get you to log in and check the shop. But that way you can at least always see something you're looking for. And not only does this help new players by letting them try all of the weapons while they're leveling up, which is something new player experience desperately needs, it also helps curve the endgame out by giving us more opportunities to constantly see something that we might want to pick up. Like if I saw 2 power swords every hour, eventually I'd be able to pick enough decent ones up that I would want to upgrade. Like anything between 70 and 80% is good enough. So while this wouldn't solve every problem, it's a great band-aid to help curve the gameplay loop from shop camping to actually running missions to get crafting materials to spam upgrade these items with, and then we're constantly just rolling legendaries, but at least that's better than just sitting at the shop. And we also still have to go do the missions to craft and upgrade this gear to do the exact same thing. We'll just have more opportunities to do it. And when the RNG systems are so heavily locked in place, we really need more opportunities. Even with this new crafting update, things are still going to be crazy. And I personally think that this would genuinely curve the gameplay loop to actually feel massively better in so many ways. But we still shouldn't just be camping the shop. And that's why missions also need to give a reward. Playing right now isn't exactly rewarding outside of logging in to just try and grind materials. So adding a gray curio or weapon for completing every mission should be what happens here. And then they have a higher chance to upgrade over tiers. So imagine tier 1 has an automatic gray weapon or curio with a 20% chance at green, 10 blue, 5 purple, and 1% legendary. Then you just up the values on every tier. So like, let's say you go all the way up to tier 5 and it would have a 100% chance to upgrade to green, 50% chance of blue, 25 purple, and 10% legendary. But then tier 5 Endless Hordes is a 50% chance of legendary with multiple gray items. And tier 5 Endless with a Grimoire is an automatic legendary with a ridiculous amount of gray items, because that, in my opinion, is the absolute hardest the game can be, is tier 5 Endless with a Grimoire. Right? And there needs to be a reward for absolutely pushing yourself to the limit. They've already focused on giving rewards in the game, so their rewards have to be better. And I've had a lot of people say that they would be fine if the game didn't have a reward system, you just played for fun, but they've decided to go with an RNG reward system to try and keep you playing longer and longer, so we should at least get an abundance of items that we can roll over and over and over again, just to help us feel better about actually getting something. It's all a mental game. And hopefully you can see where I'm going with this. To try and make the gameplay loop more rewarding, pushing people into harder content at the end of the game, so there's more people playing and more people to do stuff with, while still rewarding for doing the lower tiers for fun. Let's say you just don't want to play a hard mode game, you just want to like go sandbag and play like a tier 3 and gather materials. It's a good balance, and I think that's what the game needs. And I think both of these are easy fixes that make the game infinitely better for the majority of people and make it definitely more fun than it is now. And when we look at the mission board, we really need to go back to the CBT and have at least 2 of every mission up. Sometimes there isn't even a single tier 4 or 5 up, but on top of that, sometimes there's 5 of one map, and that's honestly just stupid. So when you add in the fact of the weekly quests being so brutal on time, like a lot of people don't have 4 or 5 hours to play every night, they have 1 to 2 hours. So if you get to 25 missions and you can't re-roll it because it bugs out, then you're looking at minimum 10 hours to finish it if you're playing 20-minute games, which is why so many people are going to tier 1s to try and finish the missions in 10 to 15 minutes, because these missions just take too long. They need to be downgraded so that they don't take 10 to 12 hours to do. It's just a ridiculous amount of time. But then on top of that, when you push into tier 5, the game is genuinely not fun, because since they nerfed dodging and broke toughness without quality checking any of their maps for anything above tier 3, and what you're looking at now is a tier 5 endless hordes of me getting stagger locked through a floor because you can't dodge while you're suppressed. And if your armor is breaking, you are also stagger locked when you're getting shot from anything. So on top of the suppression, you literally can't move. They really need to revert the dodging, the slide cancel, and the toughness back to the CBT, because at the highest level of the game, you need them like that. This isn't Vermintide 1 or 2 as much as everybody wants it to be. There's a ridiculous amount of range mobs on every single map, all that have hidden range damage and suppression values that obliterate you with aimbot precision and a horrendous suppression mechanic. We actually went from a clean and crispy CBT that felt so fluid and good, where dodging and sliding felt meaningful, let you get out of these situations and stop you from being locked down by garbage mechanics that don't let you play the game. I can barely understand the doggo and the charging mutant not having skill checks to let you break out of them alone, but I absolutely cannot understand this. The toughness definitely needs to be reverted to not being a stagger lock mechanic, and the dodging definitely needs to go back to the way it was in CBT. And every game that has ever had stagger locking on range mobs eventually removes it, because too many people quit because they think it's stupid. So it is only a matter of time at this stage, and the sooner they get this fixed, the better. And when we look at the fact that penances promote toxic gameplay, it makes doing anything tier 4 plus a nightmare for the majority of people that want to play with random people and have fun and meet new people and make friends. When you have a psyker unaliving themselves every 30 seconds just to fail their penance and leave, or a zealot that just won't shoot, you get told just to go make friends to do these things. And it's even toxic to force your friends to sit through it. They definitely need to have a better design to promote team play, like Fat Shark originally said they wanted. They want everybody playing as a team and working together, while the penances promote the exact opposite of that. So what they're saying and what they're doing are 2 completely different things, and that is a trend that we have seen for the entire duration of Darktide. So when I think about how would you make penances better, everybody wants scopes on their weapons. Why isn't there a penance to kill X amount of mobs to unlock a scope or crosshair? Or after I prove myself, Hadron can craft one for me if Hadron's ever allowed to craft anything. The Warhammer universe is literally one of the most in-depth, and on the tabletop, it's one of the most customizable, especially when weapon attachments were already promised and talked about in the past, but now it just seems like we've been gaslit into thinking that that was never said at all. It would be a lot better to just say that it was scrapped altogether than to just pretend this kind of thing never existed. And the entire thread of confirmed and removed content will be posted in the description. So something as simple as this should never be written off as it's not Call of Duty. And I don't know if this was out of context, but it's a bad look. And if you did it on Twitter, it would have been like Wendy's talking shit to everybody. It would have been really funny. There's definitely a time and place for everything. And I understand when you create something and it doesn't go the way you envision, you get frustrated and you lash out. I've created lots of things that have not gone my way. Things have just failed, and I've been frustrated and I've lashed out at people. So genuinely, do not send anybody hate or threats. It's an even worse look by the community. And also, don't blame Tencent for this, because you have to think Tencent owns Riot Games and they make League of Legends and Valorant, 2 of the most fun and respected games on the entire planet. Between prioritization on the cash shop and not on fun gameplay, you can really understand that Fat Shark is more about the money now than they ever were before. And those are basically my biggest thoughts and issues with Darktide. So it is sad to see Fat Shark become a giant L, and we can only hope that they figure it out before it's too late and start actually pushing the real issues and the real problems before it's too late. You cannot wait until after the games come out to only start trying to fix the crashing problems. And again, I really do actually love playing Darktide, so that's why I actually want the game to get a lot better, so I can see more things like this happen. No.